Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Country Education Partnership Free Professional Development Series. My name is Brendan Ryan. In the spirit of reconciliation, the Country Education Partnership acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Victoria and Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. So once again, welcome to our Professional Development Summer Series. This is the first program. There are 3 in the summer series, and today's topic is Principal's Guide to Starting in a New Rural Setting. So obviously this would apply to many people tuning in today that might be starting in a new setting in the new year in 2024. Our programs have been established along the lines of the 3 very successful earlier series today, the autumn, winter and spring series, and we've responded to suggestions from a range of educators in terms of putting the various programs together. So today I'm happy to introduce the Chief Executive Officer of CEP, Mark McLay, to provide us an update regarding CEP activities.
Thank you, Brendan. It's been a very busy space in rural education and for CEP. Some of our recent works, we've been advocating strongly around the ongoing issues around teacher housing, been looking to clarify the emergency procedures and responses, especially for small rural schools, given the impending fire season that we have ahead of us. We're looking to kick off a P-12 Executive Alliance to get some support going forward in the P-12 area and create a group there. We're really excited at the potential of that one. And of course, it's only a month away until our Energy Breakthrough program, one of our major events happening in Maryborough in late November. And some exciting news coming up soon around the small school area with CEP looking to host a Small Schools Forum in April 2024, which will be really exciting. So more details to come on that. So that's some of our latest happenings. Brendan, back to you.
Thanks, Mark. As usual, some housekeeping. Today's session will take exactly 1 hour, so the session will conclude by 5 p.m. The program's being recorded, so there will be an opportunity to review the session whenever it's convenient to you. And of course, I remind everybody that past sessions are also available online. If you have a question today, please include it in the chat box and we'll endeavour to respond to your questions today. And if it's not possible, we will follow up during the next coming week. And before the end of the session, we ask everybody to complete a survey, and you'll receive a reminder to complete that survey before signing off today. So now I'll hand over to the Program Manager, Morris Billy, who will facilitate today's session. Over to you, Morris.
Thanks, Brendan, and welcome everybody to this session this afternoon. And as Brendan mentioned at the beginning, we'll be looking at the Principal's Guide to Starting in a New Rural Setting. Very excited about today's session and our guest speakers we've got. We go to both sides of the state. We're going west for one and east for the other, and really looking forward to the different experiences in a small rural school and it going out east to some significant change that's been happening out there in that space as well. So first up today, I'm going to introduce the team out at Orbost, and we've got Peter Seal joining us today, and Peter's also got with him Joe Dacy-Broome and Trish Lynn, and they're going to be talking about their experience in that particular space, but also, I guess, in terms of what's been happening with the Orbost regeneration project, which I've spent a little bit of time in the last couple of days doing a bit of reading about, and I'm really excited to hear about that, how it started back in 2019, I think, Peter, and where you're at the moment. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to you and your team, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks for that. And Hi everyone, I will just start with the introductions. Obviously I'm Peter, and next to me is Joe Dacy-Broome representing Orbost North Primary School, and further left is Trish Lynn representing Orbost Primary School. Our story is probably a little different to starting in a new school, because we're not really starting in these schools. We're representing, and I'm Orbost Secondary College, representing Orbost Secondary College, and our three schools are merging together or closing to then come together to become one new school. And so before I start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands from where we all gather. For us, it's an interesting part, and I would specifically like to acknowledge and pay respects to the Kessos for the work that they've done, particularly in our school. We have Rex Solomon and Lynn Solomon-Dent, who've done a lot of work with us, and their influence can be seen on our new logo, which I didn't prepare any visuals. I probably should have, because then I thought I should show our new logo, because where we're coming from is what Lynette tells me that it is shared lands. The Bidawal, Monero, Nigerio and Crow-Toongalong people share the eastern banks of the Snowy River, whereas people often talk about Gippsland being Gunai-Kurnai. Being on this eastern end of Gippsland, it's a little different. And so on our new logo, we've got three dots that represent not only the three schools, but also those three traditional groups and the Snowy River weaving its way through that. And so the Kessos were really instrumental in helping us get to that. Our story about coming together to become Orbost Community College stretches back about 30 years. It goes back a long way, and we'll do our best to sort of squeeze that into about 10 minutes or so, so we don't sort of run too long over time. But our biggest issue, or the biggest thing that we've tried to do is make all decisions so that people see our school as one school, and one school for one town. And even though it's not quite right, there still is a Catholic primary school in town, so that sort of slogan, one school for one town, didn't really get up, but it's the mindset that we've tried to bring to everything that we do, and to all the decisions that we make. And Joe and Trish will talk a little bit more about that shortly. So we'll just tell a bit of a story about probably just the last few years. And so when the budget announcement dropped, I can't remember what year it was, maybe it was 2018 or 19, a fair bit's happened since then. We were put on the back foot a little bit, just from the way that it came through from the politicians, and basically we got an email that morning saying that, excuse that phone. We had an email that morning saying that in the budget there's going to be $7.5 million thereabouts allocated towards the merging of our three schools, but it didn't actually even mention the other schools, and we got told if we didn't respond, because this came from the newspapers, if we didn't respond, then they were going to run with the politicians' announcement. So we had a fair bit of work to do together just to try and get us started. And so the first part of that was deciding that our vision, purpose and values was where we're going to start. Excuse me, I'm just going to pick this phone up and leave it. That was a bit distracting. So the first part of that was working on our vision, purpose and values, and I'll let Joe sort of talk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, so following on from exactly what Celia has said, not long after that announcement was made about our funding, we decided that our first biggest priority was to involve all the staff and the students in designing our values, which would then become the cornerstone of the new school. Firstly, each school staff discussed their ideas, and after many group emails, we held a combined staff meeting where we began by comparing what the three schools already had in place, and we found that there was actually lots and lots of similarities. Then we checked in with our vision and purpose, which we'd already had to do. Then after more group work and consultation, we shared our ideas with the students, collected their ideas, and then we shared it with Dan Petro, who we've been working with, a behavioural analyst, yeah, and asked for his input before we finally made our decisions. So through this process, we all became the owners of the foundation of the new school, right from the roots up. Okay, whilst we had working parties, We continued working through what they could do, and we tried very hard to keep communication with the staff and the community as open and up to date as we could. We formed subgroups to work with the architects, later the builders, we had a naming group, uniform group, etc. But we soon realised that there was a bureaucratic linear process that had to be followed. For example, a uniform could not be finalised until a logo was designed, which of course included the colours, and this couldn't be completed until we had a name, which was decided upon and approved by the minister. And so it went, as you can imagine, all great bureaucratic things do. So naturally this caused some frustrations along the way. However, we continued to do our very best to keep updates positive and looked forward to the exciting final result that we knew we'd get to. It was felt that our transition couldn't progress though before we were clear about what we wanted to be. So through this time, the pressure was starting to build from some community members about things like, what the uniform was going to be, where the fence would be between the big kids and the little kids, and the staff were starting to worry about what classes they might be teaching, how much storage they'd have and what their role would be. So in this time, when our hands were a little bit tied with going further, we used this wait time and we took this opportunity to take a small group of the leaders to visit similar schools, to learn from their successes and their difficulties. When we were very fortunate to spend time with leaders who were very willing to share. And we've taken on board a lot of what we gained through this research trip. And so those 3 schools, which we'd like to thank very much for the way they shared their openness, was Bright, Myrtleford and Swifts Creek P-12s.
Okay, so the Orbost Community College name came about by a similar process of consultation, including various groups, Rotary, Chamber, Lions, etc., staff, parents and students all had opportunities to have their input. Those suggestions were then taken to a committee and that went up to the minister who then finally agreed on Orbost Community College. I think everyone was really happy with the community word in there, as our vision is to have it as a community college, not just P-12, but hopefully pre and post and bringing people in. So that's one thing that we like about the community and the sense of community within Orbost, given that we're going through a fair amount of change in the timber area. The logo likewise had a similar opportunity for kids to put in. Peter came to each school and did a little presentation. A few of those were held term 1 and 2, asking kids and parents and staff to submit designs that we would then gave to a graphic designer. Once those designs came in, the uniform committee had a look at them all and decided on the key themes. We did have some random ones, like we had a cow being milked, pink cow being milked. Dairying's pretty big over here. But the Secondary College previous logo had maize, and we don't grow any maize in Orbost anymore. So we decided to get something a bit more, with a bit more longevity. So the circles were certainly key in the kids' drawings. The river was a key component in those drawings, and so they went to the graphic designer who came with a logo which actually mimics the facade of the building, which has a river with bricks through colours running through. 3 circles, as Peter said, for each of our schools, and then 1 circle for the bigger schools. So we've got 3 circles and a river scrolling down across the logo. Navy blue was chosen as the key background because it's neutral, and Secondary College already had that, and so did North, so it was again a cost-saving factor for some of our families. When the kids saw the logo the first time, they could see their images within it, but they were also very proud of the way it looked, and we're excited by what that meant for them and as a new school.
So yeah, and becoming a new school and becoming one school, as we've said, each of us have said, has been our real challenge, and particularly so that because we're coming onto the existing Orbost Secondary College site, so there's been that little bit of it could be just seen as a takeover, and it's just the secondary college taking over those 2 smaller schools, and so we've had to work really hard to try and get that sense of we involved here, and not just a takeover. And one of the things that we've been working on in recent weeks is just some of the finer details of it being one school and being we. And one of the things that we're really proud of is that we've been able to agree as a group of 3 staff to a daily structure, an organisation and a timetable that everyone has agreed to. This is how it's going to go, and this is how it's going to happen. And you probably know that primary teachers and secondary teachers have a different face-to-face teaching agreement. And so with primary teachers having to, next year, 21 hours face-to-face, and secondary teachers 18 and a half. And we got our staff from our 3 schools to agree that we'll change that, and we'll just go and try and get that as even as we can. So our secondaries are teaching a little bit above, are going to teach a little bit above the agreement next year. And our primaries, it's not hard to get them to agree to come down below 21. And so that was one of the really, it seems really simple and really insignificant and pretty technical, but it's one of the key bits around we're one school and we have one set of conditions for our staff, and we reckon that that's really important. And we have one timetable, and we're all working to this timetable. So we're going to have our breaks at the same time, because that idea of being one school is relying on the benefits of being a Prep to 12, as we saw it, was that staff and students can move through and across the school with ease to have access to all the resources that are available, including the human resources. And if we don't have one timetable, then that's not going to work. And so we had a fair bit of work to do around that, but I'm really proud of how the staff agreed, yep, that's what it should be. And so then in the next few weeks, we're starting to dig into a little bit more of that planning time, because as Trish said, staff are starting to get right down into the nitty-gritty of what's it going to be like. And so we've got some meetings set aside every Wednesday from the 15th of November. Every Wednesday, teachers will be coming together to start to plan in their teams and start to work together to try and get ready for what we hope is a moving in the last week of this term, but we're not quite sure because the buildings aren't finished yet. So it might be the first couple of days of next year.
Okay, so our move. This has probably been one of the most difficult parts of our transition, as a lot of it's out of our control. Students moving from the kinder into grade prep have alternated their transition sessions between the 2 primaries. So they did 2 at North and 2 at Orbost Primary, which did cause some confusion with the community, but of course we couldn't bring them here because there wasn't the space. However, the grade 6 into year 7 has been at the school, and they've been able to meet their new classmates and participate in various get-to-know-you activities, and just not going to the rooms that they'll be in. But that's gone across fairly smoothly. We've also made a conscious effort to make transition opportunities for the other year levels, because the numbers at Orbost North have actually dropped below 25 at the moment. So it was rather overwhelming when we had our first transition activity together with Orbost Primary School, and Orbost North was just a few scattered little red uniforms in this big green maze. It was quite daunting for them, and yet when I asked the kids at the assembly, why are we here for this environmental activities day, not one of them said anything about the activities. They all just said, we're here to make friends, and I thought that was great. So that the kids have been on board really well right from the start. So we've held a couple of those days, and we've continued again this term with just the juniors together for activities, and then the seniors together for different activities as well. And every time I bring them down to Orbost Primary, because they have a lot more room than we do at the moment, the kids welcome each other, hug each other, and it's just been terrific. Very gratifying to see. We've also, in that time, taken different student groups up here to the new campus to have a look around and show them what we can while the building's going on, and just explain the process too, which always helps when they know what's going on. Okay, back to the buildings. Yeah. So, no, yeah, buildings still. Yeah. So we, as Celia just said, we hope to move in the last week of this term, but the physical move will be one of the last things we do. This will help to us to ensure that our transition flows well into next year, which is how we feel a good transition should be every year. We've worked hard all year to audit, cull and prioritise what needs to be kept and what needs to be got rid of. And boy, we've got rid of a lot of stuff, that's for sure. And thank goodness for the volunteers and dedicated staff. Orbost North has already had to get rid of 4 classrooms, and 1 was a library. So you can imagine how much packing and getting rid of stuff we've done already, which is good. Let's see now. So whilst it's been quite a mission, we have had time to go through it. It hasn't been a huge rush. We've been able to go through things and process, you know, what we are using, what's valuable and what's not. And it's given us time to streamline it before the removalists come in at the end of the year.
So the next challenge for us is to respectfully close our current schools. Orbost Primary School had a celebration of history a couple of weekends ago. We opened up the school for the morning with all our memorabilia that we could find and displayed, and had quite a few people come through, generations of families coming through to reminisce, and that was really good. Secondary College have got, and North have got theirs in the last week, or last weeks of the year as well. Staff and students, I think, are pretty optimistic, and so are the families and the community about the new school and what that means to education in the far east, and particularly Orbost. So that's about it, yeah.
Yeah, that's our story. Yeah, I think that's our story. Mark, and others, there's a lot to happen in the next 5 or 6 weeks, that's for sure. We just did a walk around the building site about an hour ago, and yeah, it's getting closer, but it's a bit of a worry. So, yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Peter, for that summary of the process. Peter, can I just ask you a question based on your experience then? You've got history there, but you're about to start, I guess, in a new role as principal of a new bringing together of 3 schools. Is there anything that you reflect on for you that you need to do differently, or that you've learnt about potentially just starting in a new role, even though you've been embedded in that community for a while?
Yeah, certainly learn a bit more about the primary system. That's been absolute, and I think just the importance of consulting widely and being visible in those schools. That was really hard early on. I don't know if we've talked here about, you've heard people talk about building a plane while you're trying to fly it. We reckon we were building a plane while we were trying to fly a different plane, and there at one point we had we were running this. I was running this school, but at Orbost Secondary, I was still the principal of Orbost Secondary College, trying to prepare and didn't know whether I was going to be principal of Orbost Community College. We hadn't even got to that process yet. We didn't even know what that process was going to be. That's early this year. And then with the staffing shortages as well, teaching about 8 sessions a week. And then in the end, I had to pick up Year 12 PE because we couldn't get a Year 12 PE teacher. So through all that, just that making sure that trying to be visible in the other 2 schools, because they had most of the questions, and I guess they felt they had most to give up, which is probably true. And I think I did learn really early on not to be too flippant about that, and about the concerns of some of the younger parents. So some of our younger parents talked about, I think Joe might have talked about fences, and some of our younger parents were a bit worried about, my little prep is going to be harassed by these big Year 10 kids, and in our small community, like in every small community, there's people mixed together at the footy club, the netball club, the hockey club, the cricket, and in the shops, and most people are related to each other anyway, so that's all right. And so I've made it. Someone asked me in a parent forum about fences and separating, and I made a bit of a joke about our secondary college kids not being too smart, but even if we had a fence, they do know how to open gates. And so, and then I reflected on that, and we sort of got a laugh, but it wasn't the right thing to do. And then I followed up to contact that parent and said, look, I was just joking, but I do hear your concerns, and and we will put in stuff in place, but no, there was not going to be fences, because that's going to go against what we're trying to do of make it easy for people to move through and across the school. So, and for it, you can't be one school if you've got a fence separated into two parts. And so I reckon that the biggest thing for me, Lynn, was to make sure I listen to those other concerns and respond to them appropriately.
And there was just a question in the chat there, Peter, about staffing. Was it just automatic that everybody who currently has a position rolls over to the new structure, or are there some challenges in that space as well?
Oh, some big challenges, and we still don't know if they're going to, like, all of that relies on like push of a button beyond us with cases or with the department, and we're not really sure how that all happens. But the process we were told was that staff that are ongoing staff members, first of all, we were told they're guaranteed their position; they won't lose their position. Then it got to, no, you have to actually express interest. So that came really late. That was only a couple of months, maybe a month and a half ago. No, you need to express interest in. So then we had to try and go through a process there of getting people to express interest in a position, but we had to look at, well, we don't really know what positions we've got yet, because we don't have a budget, we don't have an SRP. So we're still trying to work our way through that at the moment. We're getting there, and fingers crossed it will be as simple as, yep, all these people are in these jobs and someone in central office pressed a button and they all come across to Orbost Community College. But yeah, I don't know.
But the beauty of it is that no one has missed out on a job.
Yep.
Everyone who wanted a job has one.
Yeah. Except for the contracts. A couple of contracts up.
Ongoing stuff.
Ongoing.
Thank you. That's and I just quickly, I know we're just in time wise, but I've been reading your stuff, and there's a great timeline of your process over the last few years, and I wonder if you've got any advice for someone starting in a new school or in a new setting in terms of that engagement with community. Your situation is quite unique, and you've done a lot of consultation and engagement, but are there some takeaways there, things that you've learned in terms of that process about working in a smaller community and engaging that community?
Yeah, Trish, you?
Yeah, we're lucky enough last year we had a SEAL who recommended that the team engage with an outside support mechanism. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so the department have generously, as part of the package, employed or engaged Angela Scafidi from Senate SHJ to help us with that. And I reckon that's exactly right, Trish. Having someone from outside the community can be really helpful. I mean, it's beneficial for us because we weren't starting in a new site. And so all three of us, Trish actually went to school here. Joe and I have been here for a long time, married locals. And so when I say we're related, we probably all three of us are almost related if you dig deep enough. But just that bit of, I reckon having someone external is really helpful. And so our story is probably a little different to someone coming to a new town or a new school, because we've got the connections here, we've got those local connections, but having an external set of eyes to just check us on some of that stuff, because you do make assumptions, and you do, like I certainly do become a bit too flippant sometimes and make jokes where I shouldn't and that sort of stuff. And so having someone to check us on that and to guide us through some of those connections, and ask us, have you connected with the Chamber of Commerce yet, or what's the local service clubs, how strong are they, and yeah, we can provide that information, but it's someone to just remind us that was very helpful. So yeah, I would suggest, as Trish said, get someone else to go along with you.
Yeah, she's also done a fair bit of work behind the scenes with the communication as well, in the wider community, but also particularly setting up our staff forums, and very active support for that. Which has made a big difference, I think.
Yeah, it's been excellent. And it also shows that it's someone from outside, as Peter was saying, but it's not coming from one of us, which was also good, that it was someone outside with a bigger picture that said, right, you need to do this, and she was terrific. I think that's been a huge bonus for us.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think that concept of independence is fantastic in that space. And I do encourage people, I think your information is readily available about the process you've gone through. And I know I found it fascinating reading through your timelines and what you've done. So congratulations to that. If anyone's got any other questions, we might have some time to come back or put them in the chat box. But yep, we'll let you guys have a bit of a breather, and we'll go to the other side of the state. Well, not quite, but we're going west anyway. And Amy Weavell is from Moonambel Primary School, and I've known Amy for a few years now, and I've tracked her journey very closely from when she moved out from the city a few years ago and has established herself as a principal in a very small primary school. And fun fact about Amy is she loves restoring old furniture. So if you've got any questions about furniture restoration, Amy's the person to go to. So Amy, over to you, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Morris, for the intro. That's quite hilarious. Morris only found out that about me this week. So fun fact back to you. I don't know if you can see my screen, but I'm hoping that it works. I wasn't going to use any slides, but I thought against that. So let's see how we go. So bit of background about myself. So as Morris mentioned, I relocated up to I actually live in Barclay, which is about 2.5 hours from Melbourne CBD, after living my entire life 30 minutes from the city. So it was a big move for my family and I to relocate up this way to be closer to family. My background essentially has been in Catholic education system, government obviously, but I've also worked at specialist settings and a secondary school setting too, where I so pleasantly met Morris, and he's been a part of my life ever since. So I'm very happy with that. Did I think being a principal would be on the cards for me? Absolutely not, if I'm being completely honest. But my journey up to a rural setting really quite quickly, I developed the confidence as a leader after spending most of my career in leadership roles. Relocating up here really cemented the fact that this was something that I would be able to achieve and actually have an impact on community in this area. So that's essentially why I took the plunge to do that. But my journey enabled me to be in an acting principal position after being an acting assistant principal at a secondary school. So going into an acting role really enabled me to get that insight before actually taking that commitment and that plunge to apply for substantive positions. So Moonambel essentially is where I am now a substantive principal. I did do an acting role here before applying for the substantive role. Moonambel is 2 hours and 20 minutes from Melbourne. We currently have 14 enrolments, and it was established in 1875, so it has a very, very big history in the community. Our teaching profile is essentially, I'm a teaching principal. I've got 2 part-time staff, a full-time ES, and a business manager that works 1 day a week. We do have 2 classrooms, so an F to 2 and a 3 to 6. Coming into Moonambel, I literally walked into a review, which was so very kind of the outgoing principal, but that really, really did help me have full knowledge of the history of the school and where it was currently at, but also the vision moving forward under my principalship essentially. So the vision and the values were actually developed quite quickly after the review period had finished, with community members, with school council and families, and kids had a massive voice in actually developing our school values, because they had no idea on what the school values were. So these were essentially our building blocks that supported us and will support us moving forward into school improvement and change. So when I was asked whether or not I would speak around coming into a rural setting, there were definitely some themes that were very predominant when reflecting actually around a small school setting and the differences of that, of a larger setting closer to Melbourne, or even a larger setting in the country. So some of those themes, and let me just fix my spelling, that's a bit embarrassing. I don't know why that's not, this is why. Sorry. As you can see, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so that's probably not a great trait to have at all times. I have to fix that, I'm sorry. So some key themes are getting to know and navigate a small community. So hand on heart relationships are the vital component. I always knew that they were important, especially coming from a leadership, like multiple leadership roles, but in a small setting, it is literally the heart, the soul, the everything in a community. So when I say relationships, I say relationships from local community members to school council members to local football clubs to obviously families and students and staff. So it's so multi-layered, and genuinely making the time to build those relationships authentically is a definite must coming into a smaller setting. To be fair, I didn't actually know what I was walking into applying for an acting principal role prior to getting the substantive position, but I think not having a preconceived idea was actually beneficial because it enabled me to genuinely ask questions about probably the most basic things, but it really enabled me to build that camaraderie and that trust and that inquiry into what life was like at a small setting. So that was really beneficial, really seeking to understand and to listen, to then be able to use that information to put plans in place for change, essentially. For me, I have worked as an acting principal for 8 months, and then obviously in the substantive role at 2 different locations. One of the things that I found out around getting to know and navigate a small community is the concept of volunteering of time. I think it might be taken for granted, and maybe at a larger setting that, you know, I don't need to do those things because it's not kind of part of my role. But as a principal in a smaller setting, everything is your role. So actually making that investment into your community and where you are living as well as where you are working is so vital for the community to really invest in you as a leader of the community. A key part of that obviously is really understanding the notion of staying professional at all times, both in the setting but also in your personal environment, having those close ties to a number of different members of the community. So I've got 2 boys, they play footy, so volunteering my time at footy, but everyone also knows that obviously I'm the principal 15 minutes down the road. So being aware that you're constantly on show essentially about your behaviours, your interactions with people, and just keeping professional at all times essentially. The other key theme would be change and how to do it. Relationships, and that's I suppose why I focused on that first. Having those relationships and spending that time to build it really does support with the change making. At my first acting principal role where I was for 6 months, an example of how to enact change, I really walked in there thinking, I've got 6 months. What is something that is achievable in that time that I can actually support the community with or have a small impact of change in that time? So seeking that feedback from school council. As an example, there was a playground audit that had been done 12 months prior that really hadn't had much traction on solution. I knew in that 6 months that I could get that done. So that was my change for the community. The graduate teacher at that location really was seeking facilitated planning. So changing the timetable to actually enable him to have that facilitated planning with the tutor as well as myself. Those small changes actually built trust over that period of time, but it also had a positive impact on staff, but also on the community in the investment of the school and the students. So walking into a position, no matter how short or how long, thinking, what is my impact going to be? How can I actually make that change achievable and doable over that period of time? In my current role, where I am, as I said previously, I walked into a review. So I had been acting for 7 weeks, went back to my previous role at the secondary school, and then came back in term 1. So I knew review was coming in term 1. So again, I knew in that 7-week period that policies needed to be updated and procedures needed to be updated. So that whole 7 weeks, that was my focus in the background, knowing that I can make it a bit of an impact for 7 weeks, coming back in term 1 to then obviously go through the whole review process. So those little small steps, no matter what the time frame is, there is always essentially work that you can have an impact on, and knowing that it will have an impact and putting your time and energy into that. Whilst the workload was horrendous, mind you, it was still, I think, had I not had the review, I wouldn't have had the huge insight that I had coming then into the substantive role at this school. So I am highly grateful for that, but not entirely sure how I kind of got through that at the same time. One thing that did get me through was we are a cluster of 6 small schools, and we did the review process with 4 of our schools together. So I relied heavily on the cluster as a means of support and mentorship, as a way of sharing resources, debriefing over those long review days, but also they really did support the process, and it made it actually enjoyable in the sense of seeing us all come together from 4 small locations and working through what our future looks like in country Victoria. So that is exciting stuff that we now work on heavily, meeting fortnightly to improve our goals collectively, and essentially distribute the leadership of our roles amongst each other. So the notion of it takes a village to raise a child in a small community with a cluster is so predominant. I'm just so grateful that we do have 6 schools that we see each other every fortnight. All of the kids come together every fortnight. We teach them specialist subjects, but it also enables us to see our collective 6 schools as a village, and able to make change from a wide, vast range of locations. So that's changed in how you do it. The biggest advice I could probably say would be around process, procedures and high expectations. I can't kind of stress that enough. My outside observations coming into a small community was the notion that things are just done the way that they've always been done, which I completely appreciate why that may be the case. But I also think that acknowledging the history of a school is so important, but still seeing it as a means for continual development and staying in line with whether it be department expectations, community expectations, and kind of aligning these together. In order to do that, making it very clear and very known and very transparent with the community through newsletters, through conversations with staff, through conversations with families, making it known that no matter what happens, we are always governed by process and procedures. And it is our collective responsibility for child safety, for mandatory reporting, for teaching agreements, and our roles and responsibilities as professionals and educators, and building the community perception that we are all kind of governed by this, and it is for the benefit of our students and our children in our community for that to occur. So that would be my biggest advice. It would be around having those high expectations from the get-go. This is the expectation, but also this is the reason why these things are in place, is so important. Now, in regards to balancing teaching and principalship, because I do teach as well as am a principal, I don't have the balance right, and I don't know if I ever will get the balance right because they're so equally important. But at the same time too, relying on that support around you with the cluster is what I do, but also delegating and distributing leadership roles to the staff is also of importance. So I teach 3 days a week in class, but 2 days on average as a principal. But in saying that though, that both of those roles include the literacy, like I'm the literacy leader, the maths leader, the wellbeing leader, the OH&S coordinator. The list actually genuinely goes on now, and it is something that I don't have it balanced, and I think will take a while to get that balance right. But at the end of the day, all that is the focus is on the students and what is best for those students, and what happens in the background that not many people probably see to enable the students to have the best outcomes is still a priority to make sure that school improvement continues to happen for these kids. So narrowing the focus is probably how to be successful. There's always 1,000 competing priorities, whether it be a large school, small school, medium school, secondary, whatever it is. But for our context alone, focusing on literally one priority for some time in order for the change to be embedded is something that I've made very clear to our community and to the staff. There's no point doing 1,000 things at surface level, but to actually choose one and go really deep and be successful is something that I think is really important in order to then have that headspace to go deeper again with another priority. So that's our balance, and that's what we are trying to achieve here. And yeah, focusing on what our kids need and what is best for our kids, a part of a cluster lens has been really helpful. So I've probably talked way too much, but essentially key takeaways is around relationships, ask questions, genuine questions to understand and to listen and learn. Always, always, always action what you agree to anyone in the community, whether it be community members, school council members, the students themselves, the staff. If you say you're going to do something, make sure you do it. That's how you build trust. High expectations and investing in your staff professional learning, and follow process and procedures. So that's my bit.
Amy, that's a fantastic insight into your process and some really key messages there. Just a quick question around, there's been a lot of discussion around principal wellbeing, and you talked about you know, being so visible in a small community and being so embedded in that community. I have to ask the question, which sometimes I don't think people are very good at answering because it's always about everybody else. Any advice about how you look after yourself and how you give yourself a break and how you give yourself permission to not be in that headspace 24 hours a day?
Yeah, look, I think you know me well enough to know that I don't yet have that properly nailed down. I think that will come with experience, but I have a really good support system around me in the sense of my family, but also the cluster principals. I've really developed significant relationships with them. So as a means of debrief to kind of get the 100 roles out of my head, but also access AUP, you know, seeking support from the CL. But yes, my restoring of furniture is definitely becoming more significant on my weekends as a means to essentially switch off. So work in progress.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy, and thank you to the team out at Orbost. We have opportunity for question, but what I just thought, we've got a couple of minutes, and we have Mark and Brendan here who have both experienced this as part of their journey when they've started in new schools going back a few years. But I'm sure that, is there anything, Brendan or Mark, that you wanted to share in our last few minutes about your experience and something that perhaps we haven't touched on today?
Thanks, Morris. Yeah, I actually completed a action research project a few years ago and around principal mental health, but within that gained a few great pieces of advice. So just quickly, it was certainly commented the first 2 weeks in a new setting and a new town are critical to write every single thing down. The advice there, you will never have a set of eyes like you do in those first 2 weeks. And educators in school, we are shocking at walking past something or not noticing something right in front of us because of the busyness of the role. And the advice here is to constantly go back and reflect on that document that you wrote everything down in the first 2 weeks. And the other one is to be very aware of customs, traditions and events in the town, because often it's more about, it's more than just what it seems to be. And to give an example, there was a principal whose school was falling in enrolments and got down to single figures and decided to move in their first year the Christmas concert to a picnic type arrangement, not knowing that the 50 or 60 community members had been going to the school concert at Christmas time for the last 40 years. And even though their kids and grandkids were long gone, it was very much a cultural event in the town. So that principal then had years of trying to make good to the community about making a hasty decision. So certainly be aware of those things. Another great story I love, Morris, is the unofficial mayor of a small country town, who was the unofficial head of the Historical Society, had for 30 years been coming into the school with photos people had sent. She'd go through this routine. She'd go to the principal and say, "Can I use the photocopier to make some copies?" Yes. She would always offer to pay, at which case the principal would go, "Don't be silly. It's a community thing." And she would go and take the copies. There was a new acting principal. They went through the process. She offered to pay. The principal said, "No worries. There's a little container just above the photocopy. It's 20 cents a copy." And then she went, I don't have any money on me, actually, because, of course, she's never had to pay in 30 years. So all those things, traditions, events, customs, are just critical to keep your eyes open, especially that first 12 months, to what's really going on and the role the school plays. So over to Brendan.
Thanks, Mark. Like I want to perhaps emphasise a number of the things that Amy has stressed. The article that Mark's put online, I was having a look at that this week, and there was a definition of culture provided, and it said school's culture consists of customs, rituals and stories that are evident and valued throughout the whole school and community. An effective school culture fosters success for all. Now, I think that's the starting point when you move into a new school. It is just essential that you're aware of the current culture in that school and community. And that's exactly what Amy has emphasised. And I think the other important point is that change takes time, and you do see things that you need to move on and change, but don't do that immediately. Take time to speak to people. And Amy also emphasised the importance of listening. Everybody in the school and the community have stories. So I think it's absolutely essential that you listen to those stories before you make any changes in the school. And it is about the 3 R's, and the 3 R's are relationships, relationships, relationships. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And if I was advising a person moving into the school for the first time, as a principal, you need to be aware that particularly in some of our rural settings, being a school principal can be very lonely, a lonely job. So I think the other piece of advice I'd give is you really need to network. It is important to link in with other colleagues, and Amy has done that through her cluster, and I think that's essential if you want to survive in the long run. I think one of the mistakes some people make, and I'll use the statement, this is what I did at my last school. Now that's the sort of statement that you avoid. You've got to make sure that you grasp the new environment and the new culture, and make sure that you move ahead with what's happening in that school, and make sure that you do contribute to celebrations and acknowledgements and build those connections when you start at the school. So in a sense, I'm really just emphasising many of the themes that Amy's just put forward. Thanks, Morris.
Thanks, Brendan. And just as we just starting to wrap up, thanks again to our special guest today. I think, Amy, you've given us a wonderful insight into your journey, and it's been great to work alongside you and watch you work as well. You're an awesome deliverer of everything in the education space. So thank you for that. And our team out at Orbost, that was a fascinating insight into your journey and your experiences, and the next stage of moving into the community college space as a whole. So we look forward to hearing more about that, and potentially perhaps following up sometime next year with how things have moved on, and hopefully we get to come out and visit you guys as well soon and catch up with you. But just as we're finishing up, we've got a couple of minutes left, and Mark, I think you just wanted to mention quickly before we go next week's very important session.
Yeah, really excited next week. We've got Stephen Fraser, the Deputy Secretary for the Department of Education, online. He's fielding questions, and we've sent the early questions through, but he did say that he's open to late entries and to questions from the floor on the day. So to get someone of his level onto our session online and to answer questions, some prepared, some without notice, we're just really excited and honoured that he's going to give up his time. Not saying that Amy and Sealy and his team are just as fantastic, but just want to emphasise how excited we are about next week.
Yes, and you can put an anonymous question in if you don't want to put your name to it. I'm sure that'll be absolutely fine, and Mark will sort that out. So we've just about done. We've done well for time. We've got right up to the end. So thanks again to all our guests. Thanks to all those people that have joined us today. And back to you, Brendan, to wrap us up.
Thanks very much, Morris. Look, I just wanted to emphasise that that we have that session with Stephen Fraser next week, as Mark has indicated, and very important if people could send in questions. And I'd also want to mention the fact that the survey for today's session is now available in the chat box. So please complete that survey before you sign off today. And we are finishing on time. So thanks to everybody that's contributed and joined into the session today. Bye for now.